So, you want to be a hotshot car designer, make a boatload of money, and drive a fancy car. Well, to do that, you're going to need to learn one thing: how to make a clay model.
A clay model is a tool used by automotive designers to help develop their ideas in a non-permanent soft medium that can easily be manipulated and changed as the design develops over time. First, you're going to need a design. So let's start with a ton of sketching. Then, more sketching. When you finally settle on a good design, refine it and hammer out all the details. Once that's done, you're going to need to create a tape drawing. Tape drawings are used by the designers to highlight all the main body design lines and to help describe the designer's intentions regarding relationships between the vehicle surfaces. It's also a layout tool for the modeler to locate all the key points of the design on the model. With the tape drawing done, let's start with the model's base plate. We need to transfer the grid that was created on the tape drawing onto a rigid and smooth board. MDF sheets work great for this. Carefully and accurately lay out all the dimension lines onto the MDF sheet. Then we are going to use a long T-square that we modified to help draw out our lines across the entire surface. Make sure you use a fine pointed marker that can create a thin but visible line. Again, I stress, do this as accurately as possible. These lines are very important for transferring data points from the tape drawing to your model. Once the lines are done, you can add all the measurements onto the grid on all four sides. Let's cut this out and move to the next step and make a skateboard. This is the bottom plate of your model, and it's called the skateboard for obvious reasons. It gets glued to the bottom of your foam buck, which we will tackle soon. It has many uses. It gives the buck strength and rigidity, and also lets you position it to the base plate in the same position repeatedly using two key mounting points on the bottom. The skateboard size will vary depending on your car's design and size. Use your tape drawing to determine the size of the board. Make sure you cut out an area big enough to accommodate the depth of the wheels on your car. Cut back in from the front and the rear of the car enough space to accommodate the undercarriage details of your model. The same applies to the sides, and make sure you accommodate for any wraparound of the body panels. Once you have determined the size of the skateboard, transfer the information to a piece of thick MDF board. Cut it out as accurately as possible. The keys are made of two parts, a straight piece and a U-shaped one that interlock together. The U-shaped piece is easy to make. Just draw out a shape to cut away that is the same as the straight one. When cutting it out, try not to make it too big or the intersection will be too sloppy and you won't get an accurate lock when you place the buck onto the base plate. The straight pieces get glued onto the base plate in two locations. The U-shaped ones onto the bottom of the skateboard. The position of these pieces will vary from model to model depending on the size of the vehicle being sculpted. Just position them near the wheel wells if your model allows it. Depending on your design, your results may vary. Now we are going to work on the foam buck, which will be made up of multiple slices of 2-inch insulation foam from any of the big box hardware stores. We will cut them to height and length and then glue them together. To get the dimensions we need to refer to the tape drawing, we will take the outer profile of the drawing and shrink the model by 1/2 inch or 1.25 centimeters in every direction to make room for the automotive clay later. So now we have our dimensions. Let's cut down a bunch of foam strips. We now have enough strips cut out for the length, width, and height of the foam buck. All we have to do now is glue them together. To do that, we are going to use a water-based contact cement and a throwaway brush. You can pick both of these things up at the big box store as well. We're going to glue them together in 3 smaller blocks. It will be easier to work with them this way, as you will see later on. We will start with the middle block first, because it has the most pieces and they need glue on both surfaces. To apply contact cement, just brush on a thin, even coat over the entire surface. Do not apply too much or leave pools of glue, or it will take a very long time to dry. As you can see, some pieces get a coating on both sides. Once the glue has been applied, do not lie it down onto the table, but keep it upright so it can have air circulate around the strips. Make sure you keep dust away from the wet surfaces as well. Make sure any of the product's graphics gets glued to the inside. You want the outside faces of your buck to be clean foam so that you can draw all your carving lines on them. When you're done, let them dry at room temperature. The warmer the room, the faster it will dry. The way contact cement works is both surfaces have to be dry to the touch. Another way to tell when it is dry and ready for use is when the surface has gone from bright white to a clear finish. The surface will also be tacky or sticky. Line up the pieces that go together, and be careful because you only get one shot at this. Once you put them together, you can't take them apart. So make sure you have everything lined up and ready to go. Then, carefully press your pieces together and apply a bit of force to make sure that they are really stuck. This bond is permanent. Before we go any further, we need to figure out the position of the wheel wells. I took some foam core sheets and cut out the size of the wheel wells using the tape drawing as reference. I stuck a piece of double-sided tape to each piece and then lined them up on the drawing. I then took a long strip of foam core and carefully placed it on the wheel well pieces. This will connect them together and give you an accurate spacing template that you're going to use multiple times to transfer this information. Let's transfer the wheel wells to the foam. Once you've accurately transferred the information, cut out all 4 wheel wells. I'm cutting out a spacer piece for the back of our wheel well. You may not need this depending on how wide your wheels are or your body panels are. Again, your results may vary. I've applied more contact cement to the back of the wheel well. When it's dry, I will glue in the spacer piece. Again, remember, this is our model, yours may not need this. Now we can trace out the car's profile onto all the sides of the foam bucks, so that we can cut out its basic profile. This is where having the buck in 3 separate pieces really pays off. If we had glued them all together earlier, we would not be able to fit them under the bandsaw's blade guard. So cutting them out as 3 separate pieces and gluing them together later makes way more sense. So here they are, all cut out. Now we can glue them together with more contact cement. Same process as before. Coat all the meeting surfaces with contact cement. Wait for the cement to dry, and carefully line them up and stick them together. Now we make tombstones. Tombstones are placed in the wheel wells of the buck as a placeholder for the wheels, and give support to the clay while you are sculpting fenders and quarter panels. Tombstones are cut from foam using the tape drawing as reference. We cover them in clear packing tape on all sides to keep the clay from sticking to them while we sculpt. This allows us to remove and replace the tombstones as needed during the sculpting process. We've got the base and the skateboard done. We've got the foam buck cut to a smaller profile to allow for clay later, and we've made the tombstones. Now we are ready to start transferring the profile lines from the tape drawing to the foam and begin carving out the basic shape of the car. To transfer the body lines from the tape drawings, we're going to use a few simple tools to help us out. We'll need squares. An angle finder may come in handy. A set of measuring calipers, an articulating pointing arm for transferring dimensions from the drawing to the model. a ruler, and definitely a Sharpie. Let's get started. With the buck set on the base plate, we can begin transferring lines over. Make sure it's positioned properly and according to the grid, and that it can't move. Use your tape drawing to begin transferring over some of the major design lines onto the surface of the foam buck. Use a marker to draw into the foam. Use any and all of the measuring tools you can to get the information across. Once you get enough lines on the model, you are ready to start carving. Here are some tools that might come in handy for shaping foam. A retractable utility knife for slicing and shaving. This is a specialty foam cutting knife for cutting insulation foam. A raspy file with coarse teeth. Coarse sandpaper stuck to blocks of wood of various sizes to make sanding sticks. And Surform planes that have a cheese grater-like cutting surface to remove large amounts of foam quickly. Carefully begin to sculpt the foam with the panel lines as your guide to achieve the basic shape of the car. Remember, you're going for basic shape. Keep referring back to your tape drawings to make sure you don't remove too much foam in areas you don't want. You will be constantly redrawing lines onto the surface as you carve. Carve one side at a time. Don't jump from one side to another. Getting all the details correct on one side first is easier. Once you get the side done, you can then transfer the information to the other side and create a mirrored symmetrical shape. Try not to remove too much foam. If you do, you will have to add way more clay to the surface to bring it up to the appropriate height later. You're not going for high detail, but rather you are trying to get the basic shape of the car. The fine detail will be achieved using the clay. You just need to create the space for it. You don't need to sand the surfaces smooth either. You're putting clay on everything, so the rougher the surface, the better. It'll give the clay something to hold on to. When you're done the rough sculpting of the foam, do a quick check and make sure that your model is symmetrical as possible, and that you have removed enough foam for the clay later. You're done the first major part of your model. Congrats, you're halfway there. Now it's time to get your clay and clay tools ready for the next step. In part 2, we'll get the foam surface ready for the clay and start sculpting in all the details. See you there.